today we are talking about our business and why we started it and why we got into spray foam.
That's what we're doing.
Okay. I think it'll be good to start with our name.
Okay.
311, spray foam and construction. 311 is from 1 Corinthians 3:11. So 1 Corinthians 3:11 says, "For no other foundation can anyone lay than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ." And we chose this verse because Christ is our foundation for our lives, for our marriage, and now for our work. A good foundation has kept us going, and so now we're in our 4th year. We did initially start with construction and remodeling work, and that helped us, I guess, stay in business for the first few years. And then about 4 months ago, we realized that we just need to stick to spray foam, and God has blessed that. And this will be our first full year doing only spray foam insulation.
The origin of the business started 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
5.
I was working at a dealership painting semi-trucks. I had recently got my life back to Christ and everything, and it was time to leave that place. And of course, like we do as humans, we're always, well, we got to have a plan. Like I always knew that I'm an entrepreneur and that I wanted to be a business owner. I knew that's been a calling in my life. So for several months I was struggling with coming up with a plan, and God spoke to me and he said, just quit and trust me. So the very next day, that night I went home and told Alicia, and she said, okay, like always, okay. And the next day I went to my boss and put him a 2-week notice. And 2 weeks later, I was unemployed with absolutely no idea what we were going to do. And then we got the opportunity to go to Ethiopia.
Yeah, on a mission trip. So we had been to Ethiopia, I think twice before that trip. And of course, mission trips aren't cheap. But God was calling us to do that again. And even though he was no longer working, I mean, I wasn't bringing in a ton of money myself. So, but anyways, we just did what God told us to do. And again, he's faithful, and he provided everything we needed for that trip, and to keep paying our bills and feed ourselves.
Whenever I was working for the dealership, I had a company vehicle and all this stuff. So whenever I quit, I had nothing. I didn't have a vehicle, no transportation, nothing. And we don't save money, so we didn't have any money put back.
I have to tell people that.
And so, I mean, it was truly putting our trust and faith in God. One of the guys I went to school with, I hired him. We have since become very good friends, and he worked for us about a year, and we caught more bass that first year than I ever have in my whole life. We didn't make very much money, and he needed money to feed his family, so he ended up having to go to another job. And whenever that happened, it made me really evaluate what we were doing, how we were doing it, and where we could go from that point. And it wasn't a good outlook. So I got to doing research and looking at something in the construction field, because I feel like that's where I've always been. That's where I'm led to be. I was looking for something that was scalable to where we could actually grow a thriving business, and just regular residential construction is not that. I came across a Facebook ad on Marketplace for a spray foam rig. Did a little bit more research, looked at, the potentials of spray foam and, you know, what it allowed to do with a whole lot less people than construction, and it was a good direction to go. But then I just needed to finance it because I hadn't been really technically working for over a year. I mean, the business wasn't strong enough to go just buy something like that. And God led me to an unlikely person, which was the guy I used to work for, which is a friend. And I bounced off him. And after the third time talking to him, God gave me the comfort to ask him if he would finance it, and he said yes. His exact words was, you know, we have been truly blessed this year, because it was back whenever everything was going crazy in the market and everybody was just on fire with everything. And he said, we've been blessed this year, and I would be happy to help you out. And he did, and we made a very large purchase of a spray foam rig.
And that was January 2020, right before COVID hit.
Yep.
So we drove to Florida and picked up a spray foam rig.
Keep in mind that we had never even been inside of a spray foam rig at this point. Like the first time I'd ever stepped foot inside of a spray foam rig was whenever we went and spent all that money to buy ours.
Do you recommend anyone else doing that?
No. I'm kind of extremely blessed and a freak of nature about learning things that I'm interested in. And I'm not saying that you can't do it, but I would recommend highly going and working in the industry before you just go buy a rig, because if it wasn't for God and it wasn't the way my mind works, I don't think that we would have made it. 3 or 4 months before we did our first job, and that's whenever we did our training and learned how to do spray foam, was on our first job. And even in that first year, it was slow to pick up. So, I mean, like I said, if you don't know anything about the market, you don't know, one, what you're doing, or two, you know, how to actually sell the product. And spray foam is a very good option, but it's also more expensive than anything else in the market. And during that time, whenever we started, the housing and building market, it just took off like crazy, but it also, everything in construction quadrupled as far as price. So that was a struggle getting started, and was a struggle all the way up until probably the first of 2023. And it was mid-23 whenever we did a job that was supposed to be like a 2 to 3 week job, and it turned into 3 or 4 months. And it was just, I mean, I think we both had that reality where we looked at each other and like, why are we even still doing construction? I mean,
that was a construction job that turned into a nightmare.
And it's just the nature of construction. And I mean, it's just extremely hard to actually work on a job site, do construction, and grow something that you can build.
And also with construction and remodeling, we want our work to be the best that it can be. And so things like that really start to fall off if you can't keep up with the timeline and you can't oversee the people you're trying to train, or whatever that may be. So we didn't want to do bad work, basically. So here we are, only doing spray foam. We currently have 2 employees. That's another great benefit about the spray foam business, is we can send 1 or 2 guys with a rig and get a job done. You know, we can do probably 2 small jobs in a day. We can do a whole house in 2 to 3 days. So that works much more efficient than.
I think another thing that God showed me last year was one of the other reasons that we quit doing construction was the fact that if you try to focus on a bunch of different things, you're not going to be good at any of them. And that was kind of where I was at last year, and I wanted to get to the point where we can focus on this one thing. You can scale a lot easier with spray foam, and it takes a lot less labor, which has been a tremendous problem for everybody in the construction field. But with the spray foam and being solely focused on spray foam, it gives me a better opportunity to take 1 or 2 people and train them on this one thing they do day in and day out, instead of, oh, we're doing spray foam today, oh, we're going to do a roof tomorrow, and the next day we're going to do a deck, and we're going to do some drywall, and it gets to be too much. Another thing about just focusing solely on spray foam, it allows us to train up and be the best at spray foam and be the best at insulation, and whatever products we're serving, we can spend the time to actually be extremely knowledgeable and just be the best at that as we can be.
Yeah.
And part of this process, we hope to share basically our lives with you, and as we learn, teach everybody else. Not only the spray foam market, but the construction market as a total is just a lack of knowledge and understanding. And even like with us, the things that we've learned over the last 4 years after starting spray foam, it's been insane. The way that you look at a project in the building science, which building science I'd never even heard of until we got into spray foam, and like looking at building science, it makes total sense that we use these things and all this knowledge and stuff to make a better end product, not only for us and our health and our families, but for as a whole.
So that's where we came from. It's what we're doing, where we're going. So again, 1 Corinthians 3:11 says, "For no other foundation can anyone lay than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ." So he's been our foundation. That's why we're still going.
Number one thing in life, focus on Christ and your relationship with him, and everything else will work.
Yep.
And that's the end of this, and have a good day.